Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Earwax. I'm Colin, and today we're going over my top 5 albums of 2004. Alrighty, guys. So, 2004 was another banger year for music. It is becoming very clear to me that the hardest years for me to do are going to be the 2000s and the 80s. And I think no matter what, like what year it is that falls under that decade, I'm going to have a difficult time choosing my albums. 2004 is certainly no exception. There were some absolutely incredible albums that came out that year. Keep in mind the rules of this, guys. So, number one has to be a studio release, so not a reissue, not a live album, anything like that. Also, it does have to be an actual like LP, so no EPs, no soundtracks, anything like that. And then also, these are just my top 5 albums of the year. So, the ones that are like the most important to me, the ones that I enjoy listening to the most, not necessarily like objectively the best albums from this year. So, yeah, with that out of the way, please remember to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It helps me out a lot. Without further ado, let's get into the honorable mentions. So, first honorable mention is going to be Funeral by Arcade Fire. Now, this is not my favorite Arcade Fire album, but I do think it is one of their best. I mean, there's an argument to be made for The Suburbs. I think there's an argument to be made for Reflector. I know a lot of people are going to absolutely call me insane that I'm not putting like Neon Bible right up the top. And again, I think any one of those on any given day could be my favorite, depending on like what I want to listen to. But Funeral absolutely deserves a spot in the honorable mentions. But I would have to probably put it behind a couple of their other albums in my personal Arcade Fire ranking, which is why it's only an honorable mention. Second honorable mention is going to be Food by MF Doom. Now, I know what you're thinking, not having MF Doom in the top 5 is a crime. Don't worry, he's in there, just not this album. I do love this album. I think some of like his best songs are on this album. Just cohesively for me, it doesn't quite match up to either Operation Doomsday or some of like his collaboration albums. So while I absolutely love this album, still just falling into the honorable mentions for me. And then last but certainly not least is going to be Where You Wanna Be by Taking Back Sunday. This is probably one of like the best emo albums of all time, and boy did it almost just sneak into the top 5. I think there is a strong argument to be made at certain points in my life that maybe this would have been a top 5 for the year, but as it sits right now, the ones that come above it are still slightly more impactful for me, which is why this is just the last honorable mention. But still an amazing album. Go listen to it if you haven't. Absolutely one of my all-time faves. So, with the honorable mentions out of the way, let's get into the top 5. All right, coming in at number 5 is going to be Sung Tongs by Animal Collective. Now, I absolutely love Animal Collective. I don't talk about them enough on this channel, and I'm excited to start talking about them more as we get more and more into these lists. But this was an album that didn't quite grab me at first. So I got into Animal Collective in 2009 with Merriweather Post Pavilion, as I'm sure a lot of other people did. Went back and listened to more of their discography at that point. Strawberry Jam was the one that really kind of grabbed me because of how similar it was as far as like sound and production to Merriweather Post Pavilion. But I listened to Sung Tongs at that time, and it just wasn't necessarily doing it for me. Fast forward a few years, and I gave it another shot, and with the help of, some, let's just call them mind expanders. And oh my God, this is an incredible album. So it is fairly unique in the Animal Collective discography, at least like for what is now like a lot of their modern stuff, where it's just Avi Terror and Panda Bear, but it's mostly just acoustic. So it's like them, acoustic guitars, some stomping, stuff like that. But oh my God, like what they're able to do on this, like the level of psychedelic pop that they reach on this album is kind of mind-blowing. And I was lucky enough to see the anniversary tour they did a few years ago. They played this album front to back, plus a couple other songs that kind of fit in this same sound. And yeah, that just cemented it in my mind as probably a top 3 Animal Collective album, honestly. And I think it is one that everyone should give a listen to, especially if you're like at all into acoustic psych pop or like any sort of like acoustic psychedelic music. They really achieve something special here. Number 4 is going to be Good News for People Who Love Bad News by Modest Mouse. Now, this is not my favorite Modest Mouse album, but boy, is it a good one. I mean, you've got like their big single Float On it. You also have The Ocean Breathes Salty, which are probably like two of their biggest songs, but front to back, this album is really, really good and very well deserving of the attention and hype that it gets. I mean, they are probably one of the best like indie rock bands to ever do it, and this album is such a great example why. Blame It on the Tetons, another absolutely amazing song. Dance Hall, Bukowski, like just front to back, like there's some absolutely amazing tracks on this album. I got to see Modest Mouse live at Red Rocks a few years ago, and they definitely played some of the deeper cuts off this, including the hits as well. But man, what an amazing album, and definitely well deserving of a spot in the top 4. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the self-titled debut by Franz Ferdinand. So this album, it's hard for me to understate like how important this album was to me when I first heard it in 2004. So I was 12 years old. Take Me Out came on the radio. I just got absolutely hooked, begged my parents to take me to, I think, Barnes and Noble to buy the CD. And I listened to that CD on repeat for a very long time. This was like the first time I had ever really heard like the dancier side of indie rock, or like really anything that was this catchy. Obviously, you have the lead single of Take Me Out, but This Fire, Michael, The Dark of the Manatee, like just front to back, this album is so much fun. I think while they've had some good stuff over the years, they've never quite recaptured the magic that they had on this album. But to this day, this is one of my favorite, like just indie rock albums, dance rock albums, just like overall rock albums that have come out in the past, and at this point now 21 years, and I will never get tired of listening to it. All right, number 2, I promised there'd be some doom, and it's coming in with Mad Villain, Mad Villainy. This is one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. I think it's well deserving to be in the top 5 of hip hop of all time. The combination of MF Doom and Madlib on the production is just absolutely unmatched. I love the chaos of the track listing, the way that this album is just like laid out with like full songs and then random samples, and the way it just kind of comes in and out between melody and chaos. Like it just works so well. You've got all caps, you've got Meat Grinder, you've got America's Most Blunted, but honestly, just front to back, this is such a goddamn good album. Go listen to it. If you have not listened to Mad Villainy and you're at all a fan of hip hop, I don't think you can get much better than this, if at all. Like it's just, I think, hands down, one of the best albums of not just like hip hop, but like just of all time. And I almost put this in the number 1 spot. And I think that, there's probably certain times in my life where I may have put this in the number 1 spot. But that being said, let's talk about number 1. And that album is Chuck by Sum 41. I cannot understate how much this album shaped my music taste for my entire life. Like, I had liked Sum 41 a lot up until this point. They were probably like my favorite pop punk band, one of my favorite bands, like when I was around that age. But when this album came out, and similar to the Franz Ferdinand album, like I remember begging my parents to take me to the store to buy this, I could not put it down. I could not stop listening to it. I had never heard a combination of like the pop punk that I was really into at that time, and then like harder thrash metal that I had also been like getting into at that time with like Metallica and Megadeth and Iron Maiden and stuff like that. So I did not expect this when I like picked up the album. And again, I don't think it can be understated like how revolutionary this album was for me personally. Now I know it's probably not going to be the same for everybody. Music is incredibly subjective. If you watch my channel, I'm sure not every single person here agrees with everything that I've said, but this album is just so important to me, from like the opening intro into No Reason, We're All to Blame, The Bitter End, again, like one of the heaviest songs I had heard up until that point in my life, at least like within this sort of like space. And yeah, I absolutely love this. The back end of this is amazing as well, with Pieces, 88, I'm Not the One, Welcome to Hell. Like I could just go on and on and on. I think this track list is incredible. I think the way that they've layered the songs and like placed the songs on the album is masterful. This to me is their peak, one of my favorite bands of all time, and I was very grateful when I got to see them on their farewell tour this past year that they played a good number of songs off this album. Not everyone I would have wanted, because then it probably would have been the entire show of them just playing Chuck. But like the story behind this album, where they got their name, the inspiration for it, the artwork, I absolutely love the artwork here. And yeah, this is one of my favorite albums of all time, and pretty easy for me to be comfortable with it at my number one, despite my love for Mad Villainy. So that's going to be it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what your top 5 of 2004 were down in the comments. Keep on watching. I got a bunch of fun stuff coming out on the next few months as well. Please go check out my Patreon if you haven't. Again, I'm building up to more and more exclusive stuff on there, but any amount you can throw definitely helps me out a lot, keeps this going. And as always, I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.